wherever you are joining us from the world. Thank you for joining us today. This is going to be a great presentation. We're going to start off by showing a video, and then we will introduce the panel and get into the discussion. If you have any questions along the way, please use the Q&A feature to ask your questions, and I will pose them to the panel. And also feel free to use the chat box to let us know where you're at in the world and what your interest is in the world of internships. So without further ado, I'm going to play the video, and then we'll start our presentation.
Matt, we can't hear any of the volume.
Okay.
It might be because you've got your headphones plugged in.
Investments to support young people in the labor market have increased over recent times. There is still limited coordination and insufficient scale to address the full dimension of the youth employment challenge. But the solution is not as hard as you think. We just need to match the undeserved youth with the right opportunities globally. But rather than trying to solve the entire employment problem all at once, we need to start with the people that can have the greatest impact in the shortest possible time. Our unemployed university graduates. Our mission is to harness the potential of tertiary educated young people around the world by enabling equitable and coordinated access to quality employment. These people are ready to work. They are educated in their fields and desperately eager to contribute to the post-COVID world. And in doing so, they will inspire tangible change across the globe and provide invaluable support for their friends and families, not to mention having a significant impact on the companies they engage with. So, the Mandela Legacy Foundation has partnered with InternMatch International to launch the Global Internship Challenge.
InternMatch are proud to have co-authored the Global Internship Challenge with the Mandela Foundation. In response to the unexpected outcome of global remote working, we are currently placing youth from around the world into professional remote internships around the world. This means, for example, that graduates from Africa are now completing a professional internship with a company in Australia or North America or the United Kingdom. We know that a professional internship provides hands-on experience, builds professional networks, and facilitates the first important step into employment. It provides opportunity to those that have been starved of it, but more importantly, builds self-confidence, self-belief, and human and financial dignity. We know this because we've been doing this successfully for years in Australia and are now replicating our model around the globe in places such as Africa, India, and Asia. Successfully executing on such a grand vision has only been possible with the application of smart technology. Intern and company that comes into our ecosystem to ensure that every internship is compliant and monitored for quality and outcomes. We ensure that everyone inside our platform has a valuable experience, post and intern alike. Education providers, government, and other key stakeholders also have full transparency as interns and companies move through the process. Our role at InternMatch is not only to power the Global Internship Challenge, It's to assist governments to close the youth unemployment gap. It's to help companies get access to fresh talent from around the world. And most importantly, it's to enable youth globally to achieve their dreams. The need for action has never been more paramount, and we are executing on a solution with an established history. But we need more. We need enlightened companies to actively become part of the solution by creating workforce opportunities internationally. We need institutional partners that can accelerate global education programs, career mentoring resources, investment undertakings, and entrepreneur support structures to inspire tangible change across the world. We need individuals that have championed political equality, human rights, equal opportunity, and social justice to mentor young women from global communities. Finally, we need global thought leaders to join us to ensure that this initiative will unleash the capabilities of our youth, increase financial health of struggling countries, attract the attention of the world, and secure the future of our global economy. We need you. The only question now is, who wants to be the next to get their tertiary qualified youth into the global workforce?
Hello, and well, sorry, Matt, unless you want to say something, but
No, you go ahead while I switch over the presentation.
yeah, no worries. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's always great. We've got to try and play videos through Zoom. But my name's Gerard Holland. I'm the CEO of InternMatch, and together with
Sorry.
the volume's working now, at least.
Sorry, hold on a second.
That's all right. We should put that music on in the background.
Yeah, I actually like the music.
Yeah. As the video suggests, we've co-authored the Global Internship Challenge with the Mandela Foundation. And today we're going to discuss how we're helping solve the problem of youth unemployment in Africa through the mechanism of the Global Internship Challenge. So join with me today on screen is Zondwa Mandela, who's the chairman of the Mandela Legacy Foundation, Stephenie Pulis-Cassar, who's the COO of InternMatch, and Vinny Ngalula, and I'm not going to say your name wrong again, Vinny Ngalula. I was practicing before, an intern from South Africa who has been through the program, and we look forward to hearing from Vinny a little bit later. So thank you to our panel members for joining us. A few of us are Stephenie are in Melbourne, Zon was in Atlanta, Vinny's in Durban. So we had to get all the time differences right. So I think Steph and I copped it being past midnight, but the time difference isn't too bad. That just changed over, did it? Okay, so we've watched a video about the Global Internship Challenge, provides a bit of background. But Zondwa, how does this relate, the Global Internship Challenge, how does this relate to the Mandela Legacy Foundation and your agenda?
Sure. Maybe let me also start by, greeting everyone that's on the call. Thank you for your time. Matt, Gerard, Steph, Vinny, thank you for participating. So, I mean, look, Gerard, the reality is that, one also really commends the work that my grandparents did. My grandparents were individuals that truly focused on issues that were going to promote human rights, promote equality for all, and address issues around social justice. When we obviously then had the opportunity to take over a lot of the work that they did, it was very important for us to ensure that we can introduce that level of intervention to the current world. So how do we start incorporating a lot more commercially sustainable initiatives still centered around youth and education? Because youth and education were truly the key focal points around a lot of my grandparents' work besides politics. My grandmother would always say, in fact, my grandfather would always highlight the very importance around education. And my grandmother would always say, education is great, but without opportunity, it has the potential to create a youth that can be the liability for a community. And although these were, opposite views, but in fact of the same issue, it was how do you find a common ground around addressing the fact that here we are and we've attained freedom, but with this freedom, how do we then get the conversation around economic freedom, right? And so encapsulated within their vision is really our work. In its purest form, our objective is how do we continue to create economic opportunity for youth on the African continent?
And so then, Zondwa, why have you made youth unemployment? I know you've got a lot of things that you could focus on, but you've really chosen youth unemployment as being one of your key pillars for the foundation. Why has youth unemployment become such a passion for you?
So, several years ago, we identified youth unemployment to be a social issue. Not only to realize that several years later, it in fact became one of our primary pandemics. So before COVID, the pandemic we've always been dealing with is in fact youth unemployment. And when you look at those particular statistics and you really dig deep, between the ages of 14 to, or rather, let's say 15 to 34, you've got an unemployment rate of at least 47%. If you just look at the headline unemployment rate of South Africa, you've got an unemployment rate of 37%. But back to that demographic of 15 to 34, 60% of those people are in fact young women, right? So of that demographic of 47%, 60% of those are young women. So the reality is that unemployment is affecting our community where it hurts most, right? Because from the studies we've done, we know that 15% of any revenue or value that a woman generates, in fact, 15% of that goes back into the community. So naturally, if you've got so many out of employment, out of access to jobs, it really becomes a serious social issue. Now that then really informs our 4 key pillars, right? Our first pillar is job creation, simply because I've highlighted the plight, the fundamental issue of unemployment. So how do we drive opportunities that have scale that can actually assist us in addressing the issue of unemployment? The second pillar would then be women in leadership. As I've mentioned, that the most impacted demographic of that, of that grouping are in fact young Black women. So naturally within our organization, through our partner networks, we do have programs that are biased around creating further opportunity and career trajectory for young Black women. The third pillar would be training and education. The reality is that, many people within South Africa are either have not had the opportunity to complete school. And as a result, many people have not had access to a first-time job, right? Now, the reality is that unemployment, however, eventually became an issue that was not only specific to that particular demographic. So the training and education piece means that we need to make people job ready for those particular opportunities. But because unemployment started affecting many other people who are highly educated, have had previous jobs, the real question was, how do we then start introducing solutions that could actually now cater for that particular demographic? The fourth and final pillar, Gerard, would then be financial literacy. We do believe in giving people an opportunity, but a first paycheck can either be, access to a liability or the concept of the generation of wealth. So we also need to educate people around the use of money. But the part I'd like to now focus on for the purpose of this internship conversation is that piece around what we had to do in terms of intervening in creating jobs for people that are highly skilled, have had work, but are now out of work. And that's really then where I guess this relationship with InternMatch became very critical, because we identified the InternMatch platform to be the best of class. And in order for us to create opportunities that may have not existed within the context of South Africa or Africa, we had to answer a very simple question. How do we connect young people that are talented with opportunities that can exist anywhere in the world. But the primary objective was, how do we train people through an internship initiative, but have the result where we can actually, in fact, guarantee them jobs? Because the history we've had in South Africa is too many people moving in and out of training programs without the result of a job. And that's really where this particular partnership became the ideal solution to cater for that demographic.
Yeah, it's a really important component, isn't it, Zondwa, of having that pathway to actually employment. So you can go and throw more money and more resources at training people, but what's the ultimate outcome happening at the end? And so, Steph, I'm going to throw over to you a bit now. That when we first started talking with the Mandela Foundation, and it was all the problem that Zon was just described is pretty daunting. It's pretty big. We thought, how are we going to tackle this thing? So, where does InternMatch fit into to what Zon was talking about?
Thanks, Gerard. So as InternMatch has a specific focus on enhancing employability outcomes for higher educated students and graduates, it became quite clear where we fell into the foundation's equations. InternMatch has worked with over 10,000 students and graduates, and we believe supporting the qualified graduate market in South Africa will provide the greatest impact in the shortest amount of time, as these students and their families have already invested significantly, both financially and with the time it takes to complete a degree. With the onset of the global pandemic, we needed a bigger solution. So together in partnership, we created this Global Internship Challenge, where we're going to place 1 million internships by 2030.
Yeah, so pretty bold and pretty aggressive, but obviously we believe with our partners, and John will probably talk a bit more about some of our partners in Africa too, because it's not possible without them. But you mentioned before, Zondwa, about sort of looking around the world and seeing how you can help solve this problem. In terms of in the program that we've put together, what is there an element around bringing jobs to Africa that has really got you excited? Because obviously with unemployment so high, you've got to have the jobs there, right? To either create more jobs on the continent or you bring jobs in. Maybe talk to us a bit more about how we can try and help solve that problem of the supply of actual opportunities.
Yeah, look, one of the things I actually speak proudly about is the human resource we have on the African continent. I think in an ever-changing world where as humans we're very attached to things like technology, what we need not forget is a human component that in fact drives society, that drives organizations, and actually that drives community, right? And for us, from an African proposition, our responsibility is actually to put the human resource at the forefront of many global solutions, right? But now the reality is that from a capacity and scalability point of view, I would say on average, every year you've got at least 200,000 young people leaving tertiary and coming into the job market. And that number is very large. And unfortunately, in many instances, there are not enough jobs, opportunities to cater for those young people, because the reality of, the economic system of South Africa, it was really a very conventional one, finish school, do a law degree, or rather, go into, a law firm, finish school, go into a bank, become a doctor, all these conventional realities that do not inspire people to actually create further opportunities. So social entrepreneurship became a conversation at a very late stage. Founding new companies was a very late conversation. So entrepreneurship is really something that we're only getting into slowly. So, and really that's really where the opportunity lies, and really, kind of creating a mass requirement of opportunity that exists. So the reality is that, to your point, Gerard, we need to bring these alternative sources of opportunities and jobs to the people that need them most, right? And we learned this particular approach from a lot of the other work we do, which you're also familiar with within the BPO space, which is an acronym for business process outsourcing, which is a fancy word for call centers. And the reality is that that is really where we were able to hone in around how we create a lot of opportunity for young people by inviting many global organizations in English-speaking territories to come and do their outsourcing in South Africa instead of India or the Philippines in a free market system. Simply because, once again, we had this great human talent that was not being accessed by organizations because it could be really a great solution. Now, to that compliment and to the work that we now identified with yourself, it was really that, how do we take a program and ensure that we can actually introduce a program that has scale? Because at the end of the day, I've mentioned statistically how many young people come into the job market. And with that type of number, there's no point in introducing, once again, initiatives that can only employ one person, 10 people a month or a year. We need something that has scale, we need something that has breadth, and we need something that we can gather as much data from in order to continuously direct the right global opportunities to the right talent that I believe exists on the African continent.
Yeah, I know early days, Zondwa, we might talk in thousands and you talk in millions. You have millions of people instead of thousands of people. And yeah, it sort of blows your mind just how many people live on the African continent, right? So when you're looking to solve problems at scale, you're literally talking to hundreds and thousands and millions, and you got to think that big, because if you're going to have an impact, you have to think about those type of numbers. And I think one thing that we've talked a lot about is the pandemic and the impact of the pandemic. And it's really created an opportunity for a program like this, and it's created an opportunity for South Africa and the African continent. And that's because people have changed the way they work. And in some of the latest stats that are coming out, I'm going to reel some of them off now, but you've got in the USA that 4 million workers are resigning every month. And as many as 1 in 4 workers have changed jobs since the start of 2021. That's 25% of people changing jobs. That's a huge turnover. 21% of females and 60% of older employees are saying they're not going to go back to the workforce. That's a huge percentage of the workforce that aren't going back. Those jobs need to be filled. In Australia, 38% of workers intend to find a new job in the next 12 months. That's a third of the workforce that are looking for another job. So the result there is that 52% of recruiting employers are struggling to find the right candidates. So, and the good news is you've got, and we can call it good news, but you've got places like Australia, the UK, the USA are really, really starved of getting good people into their organizations. They might not have them in their own backyard. So the pandemic changing the work environment, where now people want to work remotely. So previous to the pandemic, 30% wanted to work remotely. Now it's 48%. 56% are saying that, that's something they really want to do full time if they're allowed, not just part-time, full-time. And then you've got the big one, which is 2 out of 5 employees would rather resign with no job to go to than to go to the office 5 days a week. And I just find that incredible, right? In 2019, it's just crazy, but they'd literally rather not have a job. So all of a sudden we've got this situation where you have full employment in some of the Western countries. You got access to a remote work environment, and people don't care where you now live. So the African continent now actually comes onto the market. Just another couple of final stats in terms of the employees. 78% of CEOs believe that remote working is here to stay. It's part of their long-term strategy, and 47% saying that they'll allow employees to work from home full time. That's a big, big shift of, the leaders in business saying that remote working is here to stay. So we fast forward 3, 4, maybe it's 5 years where remote work is just work, right? We don't even call it remote work anymore. So a consequence of that is that we're now seeking a different recruitment funnels. So the program that we've put together probably doesn't exist pre-COVID, but now we can actually get the talent that you're talking about that's on the African continent. And we've met some of them. We've got Vinny on the call on today, who's one of those people that we can open up a completely new portfolio of people that can actually fill these jobs. So that's enough of me rambling. I'm supposed to be emceeing, but Steph, so but based around that, what opportunities is it creating for remote internships? I'm talking about remote work, right? What does it create for remote internship models?
Yeah, it's definitely led to the rise in the remote internship space. If I think back to kind of the middle of COVID, or even more towards the end when Australia started to open up, even at that point, we still had 60 to 70% of people choosing and selecting to do remote internships. And so, as we like to say, it's now intern from anywhere to anywhere. What it has done, I think, Gerard, is it's leveled the playing field for international students from disadvantaged backgrounds who may not have the financial support to travel as part of their education or skill enhancing experience. So like you said earlier, we're no longer restricted to having to go to companies that are within our own backyard. And from our experience, students who have excelled in their virtual internships are just as likely to obtain employment as those completing internships on site. And then again, just to mimic what you've said, a survey in 2021 of about 1,500 college students found that more students wanted a hybrid internship model rather than completing an in-person experience. So what that says to me is that what students and companies really want is choice and flexibility.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the internship models now have to adapt for that. And so, Zondwa, how do you see that remote work playing out for opportunities in Africa? So we're seeing it playing out in Australia and the UK, that this whole remote work, the hybrid work. How do you see it playing out with the opportunities for Africa?
Yeah, I mean, Gerard, you mentioned that. I mean, I'm in fact in Atlanta at the moment, and you know very well that, we come here to engage with various organizations, companies, about this proposition we have for the African continent. And in fact, for them, this is actually a real solution. And almost every single meeting I'm in, one of the primary things people are complaining about, no one is returning to work. And all of those, things you mentioned around a sense of entitlement for very basic working jobs becomes a serious issue. And, so now the reality is that personally, I've actually got nothing against the fact that people want to have much more meaningful work experiences, want, the flexibility so that they can be with family and do other things. I think work actually has to mean that. But now the reality is that if you're a company from Boston, from Atlanta, from New York, from anywhere else in the world, and you know that you have remote working employees, what is the difference whether they're sitting in Boston or whether they're sitting in Cape Town or Durban? And that is then the real opportunity for us, is that for as long as we've got high-speed connection, laptops for our young people, they could be anywhere in the world, in Africa, still servicing global organizations.
And I think that's the most exciting part, isn't it? That literally companies think that way now. And I know when we talk to companies saying, hey, would you consider taking on an intern from Durban? They're like, tell me more about this. I'm happy to look at this. Like, why not? And there's challenges to work through, but it's very rare do we get a company say, no, not interested. They're actually more intrigued and they want to explore it. It's a pretty daunting, you might think it's pretty daunting being a grad these days, I suppose, that the world's changed so much. Some students have done their whole degree learning online. But Stephenie, what are you hearing from students? What opportunities does this actually create for university students going? It's sort of, you can get anxious about it, you could be excited by the opportunities are there. What do you think the opportunities are for grads?
Yeah, I honestly think there's never been a better environment for grads obtaining skilled employment. I think you mentioned stats earlier about women not returning to the workforce and people leaving without jobs. I think within this short time frame, that void needs to be filled for the businesses in order to continue and grow. So the most obvious pull to me is to be able to draw from that university graduate portfolio of students. I also think that when a graduate has real world experience, they're digitally savvy, have strong communication and problem solving skills, they're going to be highly sought after. So yeah, actually, I think there's never been a better time for graduates, provided they've been prepared properly, obviously. And I think prepared means competency in software that industry and business is using, experience being in the workforce and the workplace so that they have a level of confidence, building personal brands. That includes even things like young individuals having strong LinkedIn profiles and a LinkedIn network. We know many youth have strong work ethic and enthusiasm. And I know we ask our students especially to have a high level of curiosity.
Yeah, and we've definitely seen that from the interns we placed out of South Africa. The curiosity, their motivation, their determination is not lacking at all. And in going through those processes, we've encountered other challenges. Part of it being where people might work from. But Zondwa, I might throw over to you now that there has been a few challenges along the way, but we've been able to overcome them together, and particularly with our partners in South Africa. They're really important. You can't do this with having good partners. But maybe you can talk to us a bit, Zondwa, about some of the things that popped up that we've been able to overcome, and the importance of having good partners.
Yeah, I mean, look, and Jed, when we started this process, I think we did scope it out, but I think we very quickly saw several challenges. But the reality is that, to your point, with the right partnership base and network base, and actually already having been in this particular environment of creating jobs, we're able to overcome so many issues. I mean, one of the things that, pop up are, how do we mitigate the fact that we've got different time zones? Now, when we are operating call centers already in South Africa, the point is that these are facilities that function 24/7. So understanding the various time zones is really something we've always had to do for the longest period of time. This then really introduces some level of flexibility for people that actually want to even get a job. They can decide whether do they in fact want to work for an American company, start their job much later in the day, or your experiences with some of the candidates that actually manage to get a job with Australian companies. How do they really then coordinate their time so that when they are in fact working, it's actually within the same time zones as in working hours within Australia? So it was like, how do we overcome that? One of the things is also really access to working space. Sometimes it may not be convenient, for an individual to actually be working from home, maybe a result of network issues and so on. So having co-working hubs become very critical. Through our facilities and our partners, we were able to create those co-working hubs where people actually can go there, have connectivity, have mentorship, have guidance, have access to equipment, have access to computer, access to a high-speed network. And the reality is that, the reason why we were able to overcome these many issues, Gerard, is that from an infrastructure point of view, South Africa itself and other parts of Africa have actually had to improve infrastructure. Many people still view Africa in a lens which kind of describes it as a third world country, whereas we've got, in reality, some of the most visited places in the world. And when you've got some of the most visited places in the world, trust me, they need to cater for many tourist requirements. So infrastructure, security has to be a reality. Many years ago, South Africa hosted the World Cup, the 2010 World Cup. You can't host the biggest sporting event in the world without having, the right connectivity and the right infrastructure. So we've really been able to, if anything, punch above our weight and actually being able to offer realistic solutions as we kind of, want to provide these solutions for young people. But the reality is that I think all is well, all is great. But one of the other things that you and I have also experienced is, a lot of these particular initiatives also require a lot of funding. We do have some good funding institutions within various African governments, but the reality is that some of those funding solutions do not in fact come or kick in to providing the required funding for us to ensure and guarantee scale. So in many instances, you and I have actually had to provide a lot of resource through our partners from subsidy program, equipment program, to ensure that we can in fact create a lot of pilots and actually continue this program as we see fit. But I think in order to achieve scale, funding then becomes one of the primary issues. And look, the reality is that we've also been able to introduce mentorship, with this, and many mentors also engage either physically or virtually with our talent, because in many instances, we've got young people. And I always say this, it's not the fact that our people are not capable. The reality is that people have never been given the opportunity that they deserve. And once you give them that opportunity, we've been able to mentor them and take them through a process that eventually gives them the necessary confidence to actually take on the job eventually.
Yeah, and I'm proud to say I was at the World Cup in South Africa. I slept on the Kingsmead cricket oval in a tent for 16 days.
Wow.
I had probably the best 2.5 weeks of my life. And just talk about the time zones too, Zondwa. Speaking to Vinny just before, she said she just got up. It was 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and she said that's her normal day. And I said, well, how many people in Africa do that? She said everyone does. It's almost like if you go to bed at night time and you're awake in the day, you're a weirdo, is what Vinny was saying. So the whole time zone thing hasn't been as much of a problem as what I thought it was going to be, because it just works a bit differently in Africa, because people are used to working different time zones. Someone has asked a question. So it's about relying on virtual internships in Africa and not sort of looking past the in-person experiences. We've talked about this a lot. And to the person that's asked the question, where we are addressing on-premise internships in Africa as well. So, and particularly through the Mandela Foundation's network, there's an enormous amount of companies they have access to. The part that we sort of do focus on for remote stuff is that's the new generation of jobs. So yes, there's the stuff that's already in South Africa that can help with a certain demand from people that need work experience, but we need to bring more in. And that's why we've had a big focus on the remote side, because we need to keep funneling more in. Do you have anything to add to that, Zondwa?
No. I mean, you've answered that question appropriately.
Great. Look, the part of the exciting part for us is being able to bring all this together and the execution of it. And before we go and have a chat with Vinny, who's the very exciting part of the actual stories and the people's lives that we've changed, Steph, you've been really close to the execution. Zondwa and I probably go and have a lot of conversations with people, and then we hand it over to people like yourself to say, make it happen. But you've been very close to it the whole way through. What are some of the solutions that we've put in place that we've had to make this work with it, particularly with our partners as well?
Yes, so as Zondwa has mentioned, with strong partnerships, we were able to solve many of the logistical requirements enabled to enable the program. But in addition to that, we have actually developed software and technology to enable us to actually do it at scale. And I think that's the key that Zondwa was referring to earlier. So obviously we've created and developed InternMatch, which solves the problem of students and graduates not being able to get experience. It's that chicken and the egg thing. How do you get experience if you can't get experience? And therefore nobody will get you a job. So we've solved that with internships. But then we've also realized through doing thousands of internships that there's still a gap between a formal education and what industry is actually looking for. And some of that is based across employability skills, digital training, and business acumen. So in order to combat that, we've developed Intermatch Academy, which is something that all of our students start before their actual internships. Going a little bit deeper, we also then realized that students need ongoing guidance. So we created Mental Match. I think you can see a theme here. Mental Match has provided interns with an external professional mentor so that they would have an extra layer of support before, during, and after their internship. Then from talking to our mentors, and again, the data that we're collecting and the information we're receiving on thousands of students across the world, we've realized that our students aren't actually being recognized for the skills that they're obtaining while on their internship. So we've gone ahead and created CredMatch, which is to formally recognize the skills that interns develop while on their internship that are then endorsed by industry and can be pushed out into the employment market. So yeah, our combined and integrated suite of products and services provides a layer of ongoing support for the future of students from the time they apply for the internships all the way through to an offer of full-time employment. And at the end of the day, I think experience matters.
Thanks, Steph. We're going to get on to the highlight of the show, I think. We're going to have a chat to Vinny. So we're very fortunate that Vinny's been through the program. She's been fantastic since the day that we met her. Steph, you've been very lucky to see Vinny's journey closely. I don't think you guys still WhatsApp each other. several times a week. And you've had the pleasure of watching Vinny's journey. So rather than me trying to claim the credit for of Vinny's success, I'm going to throw it over to Steph and Vinny to have a little bit of chat about Vinny's experience and what her outcomes have been.
Yeah, and thank you, Vinny, for jumping on with us today, all the way from Durban. I would love to say a million awesome things about you, but I don't want to give all of it away. So let's just start with how you actually heard about the program.
Hi everyone, my name is Vinny Ngalula, all the way from Durban. Yeah, I'm representing. Yeah, thanks for having me. So Steph, I was actually on my lunch break, and at that time I was a customer service representative. So what our campaign Metro did was we used to have like a theme day once a week, and there would be flyers on the walls just to tell us like how we're supposed to dress up for that specific day. So I'm walking past with my cup of coffee, then I see a flyer and I'm like, I wonder what's the theme for this week. So I have a look and then it's just in big, bold writing. Do you have a qualification, a degree or diploma? Are you interested in getting experience? And I'm like, of course I am. So I read the flyer and I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm sold. So that's how I found out about it.
Okay. And obviously you said you wanted to do the internship to gain experience, but if I remember rightly, you originally formally studied to become an accountant, yet you ended up going into marketing for your internship. Do you want to tell us how we went down that route?
Yes, it's actually a very interesting story. So initially, my interest was to be an accountant, and I wanted to be an accountant for two reasons. Number one, that's where the money's at, and also because of the opportunities. And that's what I had thought back at that time. However, that was not what I really wanted to do. So after going through like the whole assessment process based on my interests and hobbies with you and Gerard, it made me realize that marketing was actually where I wanted to go because it matched my interests and my hobbies, because I love to read, creative writing, problem solving, communicating. So I was like, this is perfect for me. So thank you.
Yeah, I actually I remember the light bulb moment we had when we were having our initial conversations with yourself, and you talked about accounting, and then just you could hear the passion and enthusiasm and your own personal self-development. I think an accounting background helps in marketing when you're talking about return on investment for the spend that you're spending in that marketing space, and how you can identify and create forecasts for marketing. So yeah, your passions really shine through for me, and it made total sense that we organize an internship for you in that marketing space. So let's set the scene. So basically, you're in South Africa, interning into an Australian business. Who was your host company, and how did they make you feel welcomed and a part of their organization?
My host company was Pulis-Cassar. So basically, they are a strategic design and marketing agency in Melbourne, Australia. I had like the most amount of fun working for Pulis-Cassar. I didn't know that working could be fun because, I mean, we all stick to a routine. So, I mean, we had a lot of fun and informative Zoom meetings. We had exciting and trending activities. Then we had icebreakers. We were family. It didn't even feel like I was working because I was enjoying what I was doing. At the same time, I was gaining experience and knowledge. And the fact that we catered for each other's time difference, it didn't even feel like we are in two different countries or two different worlds, two different backgrounds. I didn't feel that at all.
Yeah, fantastic. And I remember in an earlier conversation, you mentioned that you're still in touch with your host company, and you're utilizing your host company now as a professional mentor. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I worked with 5 beautiful, amazing ladies. We still keep in touch. We still have a relationship outside of work. And that's something that I've never experienced before, and I love it. So we still keep in touch. They still give me advice, like sound advice, whether it's about work, whether it's about personal. I love it. I love the fact that we still bond and we're still together.
And tell us, what was it like working out of the InternMatch hub?
Well, it really prepared me. You know, I'm going to start by saying that my LinkedIn profile and my CV was terrible. And I didn't know, because when I got through the whole InternMatch hub, like, I was able to better my LinkedIn profile, make it stronger and better, and so did my CV. And also I was provided with all the technical equipment that I needed. It was a safe and fun environment, and I had all the support that I needed, as well as mentors. I mean, honestly, it was great. It's like InternMatch thought of everything. Everything. Amazing.
And so what did you take away from the internship itself?
Where do I start? Oh my goodness. Well, when I first started with InternMatch, right, I was a bit of a reserved person. And through the whole process, I just learned to put myself out there and to just be more out there. I became more vocal, and I also obtained lots of new skills. I was able to use different apps, tools, and softwares that I never knew even existed. For example, Canva and Google Analytics and many more. So I use these softwares throughout my day-to-day intern match or internship process, and it just helped me attain more knowledge and gain more skills, which right now makes my life so much more easier. Like, so much more easier. You have no idea.
And I know Zondwa mentioned earlier about it now starting to come into fruition in South Africa or into Africa about the entrepreneur market. I believe your host company supervisor was a firm believer in you having a side hustle. Is that right?
Yes, she did. And she, when she sat down with me and she told me like why I need to have a side hustle and all of that, I sat down and I thought about it. And as time went by and I was obtaining and getting all these skills, it made it so much more easier for me to sit down, come up with a business plan, be able to market my business. And my side hustle, I might say, is doing really well right now. So yay.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm so proud of you. Just last question from me, I promise. How has completing this internship program impacted your life?
I've got 2 words for you, Steph. Growth and promotion. I have grown so much as an individual, and it's shown in my work. For example, I went from being an agent to being a performance coach to being an assistant trainer to being a floor trainer, and I'm also currently a voiceover artist for CCI, and that is something that is huge and that's big. I'm thinking about just growing my little side hustle, my business, making it bigger, and also working with international companies. So growth and promotion, I'm there.
Incredible, Vinny. I am incredibly proud of you. You're a fantastic representation of the talent that is available in Africa, and I'm so glad that you've been able to really excel since finishing the program. Congratulations.
No, thank you, Steph. Thanks to the Mandela Foundation, to InternMatch, Pulis-Cassar, to just everyone that just played a role. You guys are awesome.
Oh, you're on mute, Gerard.
Of course I had to do that. Thanks, Vinny. Love to hear your story all the time. It's good to see you again. I do look forward to getting back to South Africa at some point, and I do owe you a lunch or a dinner, as I think I've promised before. So we will get there again at some point. But we did want to leave some time in case there was any questions. So we've done exactly 50 minutes as we'd planned. It's pretty good timing. But I do want to thank Zondwa, Steph, and Vinny, and for Matt. I don't know if there are any questions. There might be one's come through. Great presentation. I guess I still have some questions about the funding and how it works. Currently, who funds the program? What's cost per participant? Are internships paid or a mix? Yeah, really good question. As Zondwa alluded to, it's you got to herd quite a lot of people in order to get something like this working. We do have partners that are covering stipends for the interns. We've got other partners that are contributing to the costs of running the program. It's coming from multiple sources at the minute. There's new ones coming in all the time as well. So it is quite a mix. It's not cheap to run. There's a lot of resources that goes into it, but we're very lucky we're getting some really good support and behind it now. But we've got different parties actually funding different parts of the model. So it's getting to a point now we can really start to scale up because we've got many sources there. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Zondwa.
Yeah, and I mean, you touched on the fact that, yes, there's stipends and various resources, but I think the fact that we've got the, access to some substantial infrastructure really also helps. So, a serious cost component, which would have been infrastructure, that already being factored in and existing, allows us to have access to, quite a very costly cost item.
Yeah, agreed.
I have a question, but first I want to start with an apology. I'm sorry that I botched the video at the beginning. That literally is my biggest nightmare, and and it came true there. So thank you for everyone's patience. I will send out a link to the video. I'll send out a link to the video so that everyone can watch it. I do have a question though. In North America, certainly, I'm in Canada. We're guilty of kind of talking about Africa as this sort of homogenous zone in which everyone is alike, when it is the absolute opposite. So Zondwa, I was wondering about the Mandela Legacy Foundation. Do you have activities outside of South Africa as it relates to youth employment and internships and that sort of thing? And then sort of a carry-on question to Gerard or Stephenie to talk about some of the activities that are happening in other places. I know Ghana, Uganda, and many other countries are sort of developing internship and youth employment programs.
Look, I mean, Matt, the reality is that, we're part of something that is in fact bigger than ourselves, as we sit here. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that in fact went into this legacy, and there were a lot of other countries and individuals that actually in fact contributed also where we are today, and that really created very strong relationships with continents and countries for ourselves as an organization. I'm able to travel the world and access certain places and have these conversations, not only because trying to create a solution to the world, because we believe that Africa in its own right is a global player, right? And by virtue of doing so, that means, we've had historical interactions with Canada, Ottawa, from, various Pan-African initiatives. We believe in that bridge of the USA and the African continent in terms of a lot of skills and resource transfer. We're connected to Australia. So the reality is that we do not identify ourselves or identify the solution solely to be an African problem and just an African issue. You must realize that if you look at, the statistics of Africa potentially being the, in 2050, Africa will have the largest population on the African continent. In fact, 26% of the population will be on the African continent. That can either be two things once again. It can either be a liability for the world or a great opportunity, right? And, we've coined a term that says we believe in an Africa that is focused on trade and not aid. And that just really says that whatever we're able to do as Africans means we can duplicate it in many other parts of the world, in the Americas. Parts of the conversations we also have here, whilst we're here, is that we're engaging with a huge organization. We're talking like top 100, top 500 companies, and they're asking us for assistance as to how we can provide a solution. Yes, it might originate as an African one, but it means the extension of our effort then feeds into the issues that in fact exist in many other parts of the world.
Yeah, and Matt, just to jump in with the part for us, but yeah, look, Kenya is the next market that we're already looking at, where part of the infrastructure that Zondwa talked about before becomes really important. So we need to have partners that have the infrastructure. One of our partners has got that in Kenya. And so for us, that's the natural next country to go into. I'm still very much learning about the nuances between the countries in Africa. I know that they are different, and it's funny when you were talking to someone about Ethiopia not long ago, and someone was just so passionately talking about the talent that's in Ethiopia and tech talent that's in Ethiopia.
Tech talent.
Yeah, and so we understand sort of there's nuances between all the African countries, and they're not all the same. But it's being aware of it, I suppose, is important too. I see it's a bit similar. People say inside India is very different. The north different to the south, and
Right.
you can't call all of Africa being the same when my understanding is they are quite different.
Excellent. I have to follow up just by asking Vinny, what's next? I mean, it sounds like you have so many things on the go. You're somebody I'm going to follow because I know you're going places, and so what's next for you? What's next on your dream board?
On my dream board, okay, I just want to get bigger and better, and I just want to learn. So I want to maybe perhaps get another internship, acquire more skills, more knowledge, and then just expand. Like the sky is the limit right now. So I am flexible, I am ready, and I am down for anything. I just want to grow.
Awesome. And Stephenie, how great is it to work with students like Vinny? Like it's we've had 2 years of bad news, and it's got to be really fulfilling to see somebody like Vinny do so well.
You've got no idea. I remember the very first focus group we ran, which was 15 of the youth sitting in a conference room, Zooming with myself, and the energy and the enthusiasm that these people have. I've never seen it before. And I've worked with thousands of students in Australia, international, domestic, and just the excitement that this opportunity provided to them, and you could just tell it meant the world. And I think we always say in our space that we can teach skills, and we can teach technology. Having the right attitude has got to come from within, and it makes all the difference. And the whole experience has been an incredible learning curve, and I didn't think it would ever be possible. When Gerard first said, "How do you feel about doing this out of South Africa?" I said, "Are you crazy? How are we going to do that?" But yeah, it's just blown my mind.
Well, fantastic. I don't see any further questions, and we're pretty much at the hour. So I just would like to thank each and every one of our panelists, Vinny, Zondwa, Gerard, and Stephenie. Really insightful and informative. So thank you very much for participating today. And I want to thank everyone that attended the call. I have been recording it. And I also wanted to thank our partners as well, which is International Experience Canada, who I know has quite a few outreach programs through their global skills development initiatives on the continent of Africa, and to Virtual Internships as well for supporting the conference. And so without further ado, I'm going to end the session. And thank everyone for their time today and their insight. And Stephenie and Gerard, you can go to bed now. I think it's quite late in Melbourne. And Vinny, who knows what time you go to bed? I think you have like probably another 8 or 10 hours until it's 4 in the morning there. So it's been.
I just woke up.
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic. So I just wanted to thank everyone, and I want everyone to have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll be also in touch with the link to the recording today, so that you can share it with your colleagues and friends and that sort of thing. So I'm going to end it on that note. So have a great rest of your day. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks,
Matt.
Thanks for having us, Matt.
Thanks, everyone.